Live. Wow, we're live.
Awesome.
How exciting. So this is Rachel Hamilton and Diana Dutkowitz Hamilton. And
Hamilton Duckowitz.
Hamilton Duckowitz. Hope we can edit this.
That's all right.
And we are Family Treasures going live.
Yeah.
So Diana's doing a new blog. Why don't you tell us about your blog, Diana?
Yeah, I'm doing a blog with stories, family stories that have been handed down from my grandmother. Others I found by researching the family tree. Found one
Ghost.
Ancestry.com. And
Sorry.
Yeah.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Woo.
And this is one of our favorite stories that was handed down. It happened in 1842. Anyway, the blog is just family stories, but this is one I focused on for Halloween. It was going to start out to be a two-parter. It's ended up being a three-parter because I really actually did find a lot more, I researched, I found a lot more information than I thought that I had. So, it's a story that takes place in 1842. Husband drowns his wife and child in Fairfield Pond. And one of our ancestors, Sappho Marvin, dreamt that Eugene Clifford had drowned his wife and child and buried these shawls that they wore everywhere because they never found the shawls with the bodies. And Sappho dreamt that they were buried on the shore of Fairfield Pond and could take people right to the spot. They found them. And
Now, for years, we thought this was just
a story.
A story, right?
And then my grandmother wrote about this in her book that she published in 1976 called Vermont is a State I Love. And this was one of the stories that her great aunt was a Sappho Marvin. And in, I think it was 1999 or 2000, a newspaper article appeared in the Burlington Free Press. They did a reenactment of the trial and thus acquitting the man, Eugene Clifford, because the only testimony they heard was from Sappho Marvin, whom in the article they said it was Abigail Marvin, which was wrong. And that's when I said, I got to look into this. And
she hated to tell him that, but wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong. So it's and my grandmother always said it was, the case was on file at the Franklin County Courthouse. So I said, well, we got to go up there and see what we can find out. And we got there and they really didn't have much. They knew about the story, but any of the records had already been destroyed.
In a flood? Was it a flood?
There was a flood and the water damage. And so they really didn't have anything. So I'm like, okay, now what do we do? So I started Googling Dream Lake and found a murder case in Fairfield that was printed in.
This isn't the exact canoe, is it?
No, it isn't.
But there's Fairfield Pond.
Yep. This, and then there was, I found, this was actually an account of the murder and trial by the late Colonel Purley among his papers for Fairfield.
Is that the Purley Sports Center? Same family?
I believe it is.
I believe
so. I printed that out and I read that, and it was the same story, very close to what my grandmother's story was. And I put some feelers out on Ancestry with any of my Marvin descent relatives that if they knew of anything. And one of my distant cousins sent me a clipping, Green Mountain Folklore. And this was published in April of 1979. And it was the story of Dream Lake. My grandfather, so it was his grandson that was telling this story, Sappho's grandson, and owned a farm on Dream Lake and went through the whole story of how the Cliffords were good friends of the Marvins. And on a particular Sunday that Eugene and his wife and child came to borrow a boat, not a log canoe, as some have said, in order for the three of them to row across the lake to the home of Mrs. Clifford's people. Grandma noticed that both Mrs. Clifford and the baby were wearing the shawls, as was their custom. Grandpa would not have loaned his boat on Sunday to the Cliffords if it were not for the reason that it afforded the easiest mode of transportation to the home of Clifford's people. Eugene borrowed the boat before Grandma and Grandpa set out for church. Sometime during the afternoon of the same day, Eugene appeared at the home of the Marvins and told them that the boat had capsized, and as a result, both his wife and baby had drowned. When they recovered the bodies, it looked as though Mrs. Clifford had put up quite a struggle. A night or two after the accident, Grandma had the following dream, and she dreamed the same dream more than once. The dream was that Eugene Clifford took 2 shawls and went into a swamp or woods on the shore of the lake. In her dream, Grandma could see where Eugene entered the swamp, continuing a ways into the swamp, past a tree which had blown over and turned up by the roots. Beyond this, to a hollow stump which he put the 2 paisley shawls and covered them over with a flat stone. The dream seemed so real to Grandma that she had one of the hired men, who we later found whose name was Erasmus Bailey. He accompanied her to the swamp where she had never been before. She insisted on going in the lead. She wanted to see if the setting would actually be as it appeared in her dream. And the dream and the actual situation were identical. The shawls were left in the stump. Grandma and the hired man returned to the farmhouse to notify the proper authority. So they went and recovered the shawls, and Grandma was the chief witness at the trial of Eugene Clifford and was convicted by her testimony. I would also like to add that my mother, Mrs. Rebecca Marvin Goddard, who died in 1930 and who was the daughter of Stephen and Sappho Marvin, told the same story as my grandmother about the legend of Dream Lake. This was contributed by Anthony Marvin Goddard, MD, from Morrisville, dated November 5th, 1947, and this was contributed by either a daughter or granddaughter in Burlington. So it was the same story. So I kept digging.
Pretty unusual in those times, right? I'm sure that they must have thought Sappho Marvin was a witch.
And then I dug around some more, and up came an article on a site called Vermont Deadline, Dream Lake. And it was the same story. Although they called it a log canoe. Who knows? It was a boat, and
I'm trying to think, what else would they have made boats out of? I don't think they had fiberglass then.
Well, no, but they had just wooden boats, wooden rowboats.
Yeah.
Okay. So I actually did find
Google helped quite a bit on some of this, right?
Oh.
And you did ancestry
yeah.
searches.
Yeah. I did set up a family tree for the Cliffords, Eugene and Elizabeth, who also went by Betsy. I found the census in 1840 showing that she had a farm. She had a hired hand. They had several children listed, which confused me because she was a widow, and one assumed without children. I did find where she was married to a James Gilmore. So the census, I figured maybe the hired man had children, but no wife. I couldn't figure that out. But I said, I'll put that aside and I'll go back and revisit that. And this story actually.
Oh, there's that picture.
Yeah, that's where I first saw it.
Oh, okay.
And like 700. Anyway, and
you like that picture?
Yeah, they had had a lot of comments on the Dream Lake at Vermont Deadline, where if the woman knew that much about it, perhaps she was an accomplice. Well, she was a middle-aged farm wife with a passel of children, and I doubt she had anything to do with the murders and the disposal of. She's the one who called the alarm. Mm-hmm. Eugene Clifford thought, since she, Betsy had that farm, that if he could get rid of her and the daughter, he would inherit the farm. And it looked like he had his eye on another widow across the pond. So I kept digging and found a state website that had the original indictment for Eugene Clifford. The state of Vermont, Franklin County. This indictment it's really hard to read. Was persecuted in open court on the 15th day of April, 1843. Warrant, April 21st, 1843. All right. And then in the judgment of this court, probably ought to read you the witness testimonies first.
So this is part of this is in your blog as well.
Yes. Erasmus Bailey,
And your blog is Family
Family Treasures
Treasures.
with Diana at Family Treasures Diana.
Just so you know where to find it.
WordPress.com.
In case you want to read more.
So our 3 times great uncle, Stephen Marvin Sappho's husband, gave testimony about where the bodies were found, noting which way the wind was blowing and where the bodies were found and how the shawls were found in opposite direction as the current would go. Some say that they were buried on the shore, and the grandson said that they were buried in a hollow stump. Who knows for sure? That we will never know. So Stephen gave testimony. Erasmus Bailey, who was buried on our 3 times great-grandfather, 2-time great-grandfather, what used to be his farm. There's a pond cemetery, and he is buried there with our great-great-grandfather, Andrew Jackson Marvin. Stephen was his brother. And he was saying,
Man, how did we? So it sounds like our relatives had land up there. Quite a bit of land.
oh yeah, the Stephen Marvin farm. In fact, I thought it told us.
I wonder who inherited all those. Wasn't me.
It wasn't us. No, they sold it off. Okay, so this tells where the Marvin farm, Stephen and Sappho, this would be the road leading by the lake from Sheldon to Green's Corner in conjunction with the farm. Stephen Marvin also had a sawmill, which was located at the outlet of Dream Lake. And Eugene Clifford was one of the employees. And Stephen said that in his testimony. He said that that Friday, the winds were high and Clifford had been working for him. And that Sunday, the wind was west or southwest, whatever that meant. But it was windy anyway. And why anybody would go out on a boat on a windy day in October, which was probably kind of, I believe it was overcast and gray and
It was
not,
around 4 p.m, I think,
I'm not
if
sure.
I remember one of the accounts we read.
But there's one neighbor woman who said,
October 16th was the day, actually.
yeah, Mrs. Clifford was at my house about a week before her death. She said that she was afraid for her life and afraid Clifford would, I don't know what that word is,
Huh. I can't.
but I don't think it was good. Another neighbor about a week before her death
Can't be good.
was
Somebody
at my
ended up
home.
dead.
Yeah, was at my home and stated that Clifford was very mad that she carried away the butter, probably was clearing the table and he wasn't done eating, who knows,
Could be.
and opened his knife and swore he would kill her. Another Irma somebody stated early Monday they found the body of the woman 15 rods from the shawls, whatever that means.
So this is what she's trying to read off. These were actual.
Yeah, they're handwritten, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of the neighbors said that she was afraid for her life. Quite clearly, she was a battered woman. And in those days, even if people knew, they
didn't interfere.
They didn't interfere.
Yeah.
So she was like, but then I go back to the census, and one of the witnesses was Henry Gilmore, who I believe was one of the boys in the census. He was between the age of 5 and 10. And after researching him a little on Ancestry, I decided he must have been about 12 years old when this went to trial. And he wrote, Clifford came home the morning, must have been when they were going.
That morning.
That morning they were going out. And said in about an hour, he told Mrs. Clifford that she should go with him to looks like Shannon's maybe, was to be I don't know, but he wanted his mother and the baby to go. Mr. Clifford wanted the baby and mother to go, and Henry wanted to go with them. And Clifford told him, no, you shouldn't go.
So Henry was her child from her first marriage.
marriage. Yeah. And they got, after breakfast, they got ready and went. Clifford said, he told Clifford he wanted to go, and that Clifford told him, no, he must not go. In the evening, he told me not, and this must be after the accident, he told me not to tell what took place between him and my mother in the morning. One time, probably in September, Clifford and mother had they fought. He catched her by the hair of the head and threatened her. So, yeah. And then I could not find any account of Sappho's testimony, but probably with these accounts and what Sappho dreamt, and they did find the shawls, they convicted him. They sentenced him to solitary confinement for a year, and at the end of that year, he was to be hanged. And the governor never ordered him to be hanged, so he stayed in solitary confinement until 1847. And in that time, I did find newspaper articles where they would go back and tell you what transpired from 43 to 47. And in solitary confinement, he was refusing to eat. He declared his innocence. He confessed several times, showed no remorse for it. And then they could hear him talking to voices only he could hear that called them dirty blackguards and, just ranting and raving all the time. And he finally probably went on a hunger strike and lost his mind completely. And in that state, he died. In 1847, March of 1847, they buried him in the prison grounds of Windsor State Prison. So the only other thing that really keeps me going on this is I've never found, hello, Dia, I've never found where Betsy and Mary Ann were buried. There's no record anywhere. I've tried to find a grave. They're listed nowhere. We've been up to our family cemetery, Pond Cemetery, where the Marvins are buried, thinking that perhaps they buried her in their family plot. I could not find any indication of that. We tried the Sheldon Cemetery, where Sappho and Stephen and a lot of their family are buried, thinking they may have buried them with them because they had no other family. But I continued to search on Ancestry and found that I believe Betsy and James, her first husband, had at least 3 sons, Henry and 2 younger boys, the last one being born in 1839. Henry did go on to fight in the Civil War, got married and had children, and came back to St. Albans. And I believe he's buried in the St. Albans City Cemetery, which I will have to check out. Hello, Dia. Dia wants to be on TV now. Yes. Aren't you a girl? She likes to sit on the papers. And one other thing I noted, I have read a book on the Civil War of Vermonters in the Civil War. And strangely enough, from Fairfield, Vermont, Sappho Marvin's son, Charles, who would have been about the same age as Henry, did go to, was in the Civil War. And they mentioned that his mother was a spiritualist, which I don't know if she was. She had dreams and liked to tell people about them. And a lot of times it was true stuff. So they said that Charles also was given to dreams that his commanding officer paid attention to. So that was just a little aside.
So right here before Halloween.
Right here before Halloween. Another thing that's very interesting, as I've shared this story many times, and one of my Facebook friends said to me, "Oh my gosh, that story sounds very familiar. I think I have a story like that in my family tree." And I went into my family tree and went to the Marvins and went to Sappho.
And Cat had enough of that.
Yes, I started with this Anthony Marvin Goddard, who was the grandson of Sappho. And apparently he had a son, Marvin Goddard. who turned out to be the grandfather of my Facebook friend. So as I worked my magic with Ancestry, I found out that my Facebook friend and the two of us and our older sister Deb, who has helped research this, turns out to be our first cousin 6 times removed. Her name is Sabrina Rude, and we went to high school together. She and my older sister Deb took piano lessons together. We were all in the high school chorus together.
Lived down the street from each other.
And she lived down the street from us for at least the 4 years we were in high school, and we never knew we were related. So it's very interesting. So now I found another cousin.
Yeah, and be careful. You never know.
And
You might be related to that person you're standing next to in
that's
line.
right. You never know. And so that was very interesting. I found a long lost cousin. My grandmother had the same ability. She would start to research something, and my great uncle would say, "Oh, look out, Esther's found another cousin." And as we go on, I keep finding that we're related to a lot of people that we just had no idea we were connected to. So it's been a long story. I mean, I just kind of gave you the synopsis, and you can go to, like I said, my blog.
So check out the blog.
Yes, it's familytreasureswithdiana.wordpress.com. And
Could they make these things shorter? It'd be
I
easier to
know.
find them.
so, yeah, it's just about going back, checking, seeing what your history is. And I find it fascinating. Not a lot of people do. I spend a lot of time in graveyards. Not a lot of live people do, but I find it fascinating. And I was really thrilled the day that we went to the Pond Cemetery and found Erasmus Bailey. I said, "Oh my God, he was the witness at this trial," and to see how connected everything was. And yeah, I've really had a lot of fun with it. And
Sorry, Dia's relaxing
Yes.
on all of the materials.
yes, the
that we just
purpose of
shared.
my blog is hopefully some of my nieces and nephews, I have no children of my own, but hopefully my nieces and nephews will see this at some time in the future and go, "Oh, wow, I never knew that." I think it's important to know what the kind of people that lived, and you've got their DNA, and you've got your strength comes from them. And I think it's passed down, and it's like you've got a whole line of ancestors behind you helping you through this life. And I think it's important to know where you come from and what kind of people your ancestors were and how they have helped to shape you without you even realizing it. And to help other people who, even if you're not related to me and these are not your stories, you have stories like them. Stop digging the paper.
Hey, knock it off.
She's chewing it.
I
Stop.
know. Sorry. Diana's no. Dia the cat's after.
Gaia is chewing the paper. Get off my
She's trying to
papers.
destroy the evidence.
Yes, get out of here. I think you're in cahoots.
Hey, so this has been Talking Family Treasures
Treasures.
with Rachel and Diana.
Um,
This is the first one. Maybe we'll do a few more. We'll see how
Oh.
fun it is.
so anyway, yeah, this is just a little bit of a taste of what I'm doing. And I have so many stories on, but the whole purpose is to have you go out and dig up your family stories, get involved in your past, and see
Know
how
where you came from.
yeah, it's important. So
Have a good day.
thanks for listening. No, I kind
Not
of
done
rushed.
yet.